Live from the Washington, D.C. area, all empowered citizens need to know about intelligent use of resources, smart governance, inclusive communities, smart industry, and healthy, thriving urbanization. This is Smart Sustainability, the TV talk about shaping a sustainable future in the digital age with Nicolette DeVidar. Welcome to Smart Sustainability. The world is covered in plastics. It's in oceans, in rivers, in land masses, in the air, in our bodies. We breathe plastic, we eat plastic, we put it in our skin and on our bodies. In brief, we live plastics. And it's not doing anyone any good. Time to end single-use plastics and perhaps to get rid of plastics in general towards zero waste. Something to talk about. Good evening. Thanks for being with us tonight. I'm Nicolette DeVidar. We're approaching holiday season. That means a lot of wrapping, most of it based on plastic. According to the World Economic Forum, 4 to 8% of the global oil production is used for plastics. So plastic is making up a big part of our lives. Just think about how much you put in the garbage every day. If we continue our reliance on plastic, though, it will account to 20% of oil consumption by 2050. From Ziploc bags to straws to shampoo and household cleaner bottles to double plastic bag wrappings in Instacart orders, we are overtaken by plastic waste already. The environmental cost and impact are huge because plastics affect the environment at every stage of their life cycle. As a result, animals are suffering unbelievably. Fish die from plastic bags in their stomachs. Turtles were found with straws in their nostrils. In third world countries where 2/3 of the plastic waste gets shipped to, people and animals live on and off entire plastic mountains. This is no condition for life. While plastics have become essential components of products and packaging because they're cheap, they're lightweight, they're durable, they originate as fossil fuels and emit greenhouse gases from cradle to grave. While this may have been neglectable for the 20th century industrial society's economic system and lifestyle, today we face a very different scenario, where neither the industrial economy, the filling of our inner holes through consumerism, can be fulfilled with just stuff, and where climate, environment, and the wiping out of species all over the planet threaten life on Earth in general. To move towards fewer plastic and zero waste requires a lot of adjustment on our part. Consumer culture, product development, packaging, hygiene standards, and more. So how can we reduce plastic, get companies and consumers to buy into a plastic-free world? And what does that mean for all of us? Something to discuss. Joining me here in the studio is Rick Gallagher. He's board member of FACTS, the Faith Alliance for Climate Solutions in Fairfax County in Virginia. He's the lead of the solid waste team and also the developer, president of the Virginia Bottle Bill. We're going to hear more about that in a moment. Joining us via Zoom from Wales in the United Kingdom is Richard Garnett, founder and CEO of EasyServe, a refill innovation for industry and consumers to get rid of single-use plastics, positively impact climate change beyond just talk, and make the entire process of refill, what goes into the refill, more transparent through meaningful data. And we're joined by Helene Shore. She's founder and chair of 350 Fairfax, a progressive environmental grassroots organization working on county, state, and federal climate issues. She's a founding member of the Virginia Green Baggers, a volunteer organization that makes and distributes free, reusable bags from donated fabric with the goal of reducing single-use plastic. Welcome, all three of you, to Smart Sustainability.
Well, thank you.
On this very passionate plastic topics that I know people can get heated very quickly, so let's dive right in. I want to start with you, Helene. You founded 350 Fairfax, which focuses strongly on getting rid of plastics in general. What's the issue with plastics?
It's a huge issue, from climate issue to begin with, just the extraction. Plastic is made from fossil fuels, basically frack gas and oil. And so from the extraction level, it's creating climate change, to the manufacturing when it gets melted and chemicals are released, to all the way to the end of, and you spoke about from cradle to grave, where it gets processed at the end, which is not recycled. Only 3 to 10% is ever really recycled. It gets sent overseas, it gets burned, it gets in landfills. So it's a problem all over, from beginning to end.
Yep, absolutely. And I want to go to you, Rick, because you were also franchise owner of the 1-800-GOT-JUNK. And,
Right.
you know, from your experience, I mean, how many years were you doing this?
I've been doing it for 18 years.
So what kind of junk did you get to, and where did it go to?
Most of it here in Fairfax County. And we have a fleet of dump trucks, and we go to your house and we would empty whatever you wanted. You know, if you're moving out, it would be truckloads.
So is that like plastic furniture? Is
Plastic
that like,
furniture. We got an awful lot of, you know, baby toys and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And we send it, most of it goes to the incinerator here, the Fairfax County incinerator. In order to avoid that, we started looking for other places that we could send the bulky household plastics to. And there is nowhere on the East Coast that you can do that, even if I was going to ship it at my own expense. Nobody wants that.
Okay, hang on a second. So there is no one where you can actually send plastics to other than to the incinerator here in Virginia.
Right.
Interesting. So where does everybody else ship their stuff?
If you're a big company like Target or
Well, it goes to other continents.
they send it away. In waste management, I have heard, you know, if they have a relationship with Target, they will do it. If I go in there as a small business owner, as a resident, no, they will not take my bulky household stuff. That's different than the single stream, you know, plastic bottles, but it is almost impossible. TerraCycle gave me a price of over $100 for each child seat that I wanted recycled. That's almost twice as much as the thing originally costs. So.
Unbelievable. So Helen, do you know by any chance where most of these things go that companies claim to collect that then people bring back to the companies? Do we know where that's ending up?
So it depends on what it is. So just to make clear, what Rick was talking about was more solid plastics like furniture and car seats. The ones in number 1s and 2s, which would be like your plastic bottles, that kind of thing, can be recycled. And a lot of it is recycled. It's the other things that cannot be recycled. There is, for instance, for soft plastic, the kind of plastic that's in overwrap. You can. There are some places where you could bring it, where Trex, which is a company in Virginia, will make it into benches or decking. But for most of the plastic, it goes to either the incinerator, a landfill, or it gets shipped overseas and winds up in our oceans, as you had talked about.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And even from the plastic bottles, the number that I looked up lately was only 9% of the actual recycles get actually recycled, which means 91% is trash. It's landing somewhere in animals' bellies, in the oceans, in landfills, and in people, where people actually live literally on plastic mountains, and it's terrible. So it's really terrible. Now I want to switch to Richard. Richard, you come from the industry side, closely tied into the consumer side, so to speak, trying to see how we can affect a switch there. So you're heavily engaged in the packaging industry. Tell us briefly about what's the main issue you're grappling with single-use plastic bottles and containers that are used in the industry right now.
Thanks, Nicolette. Two main issues. Firstly, plastics used for consumer products like shampoo, detergents, household cleaning products, that sort of packaging needs to be reused, not disposable. And we have a system to refill and reuse that level of packaging. For any other packaging, our approach is to collect and process plastic packaging into a chemically recycled output, which allows the plastic to have a new use without being disposed of to landfill or incineration.
Now, Rick, you're the sponsor of the Virginia bottle bill. Are you concurring with some of what Richard said, or are you coming from a completely different angle?
No, he is a decade ahead of us because we still throw out most of our single-use beverage containers. We would like to see the deposit system started here. There are 10 states in the U.S. that have the deposit system, and they can recycle and up to over 90%.
Hang on, just to clarify for viewers, so when you talk about the deposit system, you mean plastic bottles brought back or plastic containers brought back into a system that collects them, and then consumers get sort of a money back.
Yeah, you would pay an extra 10 cents on each bottle that you buy, and then when you bring it back to the store, you put it in the machine and you get 10 cents back. And if we could do that, that would get, the plastic goes back, when you put it in the machine, all the plastic is the same, it is clean, and it is highly desirable for reuse compared to single stream where it's all filled with all sorts of contaminants. What Richard is proposing is that we use refillables, so we don't actually have to go back and chip them up and melt them down and make new bottles out of it. We just keep using that same one. I think in Virginia, are very far from that.
But that one isn't mutually exclusive of the other.
They're
That's
not
my
mutually
point.
exclusive.
So they're two different things, right? So one is for plastic bottles for water. I have one here, for example, that you go and you return. And then what Richard is talking is more like shampoo and household goods and stuff that we have more difficulty. Those are the typical containers that we would say, well, those are throwaways, right?
Right.
But in both cases, though, we would need to educate the consumer and change consumer behavior.
That's a big one. The shampoo bottles, you're using at home. The water bottles you're taking out all over the place. You travel with them and you throw them out when you're done.
Yeah, and with water bottles, they come out to the very end of it. So there's not something you'd have to cut open, which so often happens in consumer bottles, for example, because very often people try to kind of cut them open or see how else they could get in because you never get everything out.
Right. So the reusables is a great idea, and it would really reduce the amount of plastic. But the shampoo bottle is not the beverage container. It would not have the 10-cent deposit on it. So that's a completely different system.
Yep. Two approaches, two different things, but both sides we need to tackle because they're both a big part of our consumer life.
Yeah, it would really reduce the amount of plastic.
Yeah.
So I agree with a bottle tax. I think it's a great idea. I was a huge proponent.
It's not a tax. Would you stop with the
fee?
tax?
I'm sorry, fee.
It's a deposit.
And I was a huge proponent and worked very, very hard for almost 12 years on getting a bag fee, a single-use bag fee, because if people have to pay for something, even if it's a nickel or a dime, they are much likely less going to use it, as in the case of a reusable bag or plastic bag. And the same thing with a bottle. Rick is right. They will return it. But I think there's an alternative to that. And the alternative is to use a reusable bottle. You don't need to have a plastic bottle. Just fill up your own either ceramic, glass, or stainless steel bottle and carry that with you, which reduces and eliminates the plastic.
I would totally agree with this, Helene. I think the issue with this is that, and that's more a liability issue for companies, for example, because you never know when someone, to what extent they actually clean out a bottle that they bring in, and let's say somebody then gets, sick of it or so on, and then usually the blame ends on what the product is that's been put in there. So we would need also to adjust sort of our hygiene standards in general, and also the liability standards for companies to actually make this work.
Well, if you had your own water bottle, you're filling it up with tap water. I don't see how a company would be liable for that.
If someone hasn't washed the bottle. And I'm only saying that because I actually used to have a refill system for skincare products that I offered to customers, and customers could come in with their bottles and they could refill it. And that's why I know there's some of the issues are with these things, because you cannot, you basically, it's kind of a shared responsibility, right? So you would expect the consumer, if he's responsible or she's responsible enough to recycle, you would think that yes, they clean the bottle, they understand it needs to be freshly washed and things like that, and there are no issues. But with where we have legal loopholes right now, I think that is still where companies also sometimes get taken advantage of because they can be sued for whatever is wrong. That's an issue. So we would need to kind of get away from the liability system and make it more like self-responsibility towards the other part. That's an issue. And I'm totally with you with the refill, because I think the refill is much, for consumers, that would be the way to go.
Yeah, but liability, here in the U.S., it's different.
Is worse than in any country on the planet. Yes, it is.
Yes.
There is no other legal industry that is like the United States. Let's just call it out for what it is.
I'm not going to argue about that one.
It's not, because it's not arguable. This really isn't.
But I think you just have to address the problem that, if you do bring in a dirty container to a store, and the person following you, has to accept some sort of liability that says, yes, I am filling it up at a public, refill station. Those sort of things I think you can tackle, but it will be years.
Yeah, I think so. But I think we're at the verge where people are more open to that, to bring their own containers, to refill their stuff. And I think it's kind of growing if we have sort of if we put the avenues out there to make it happen. I just want to go back quickly on the plastic bag payment, that really is a payment, versus your bottle system is not, because it's kind of a pay and reward. So you pay for it, but you can get it back if you return the bottle, right? So that's a little different.
That's different. It's not a tax or a fee.
Right.
Yes.
Whereas for the plastic bags, Helene, you just pay, this is kind of like similar like in Europe, you pay your 5 cent or your 10 cent for a plastic bag, but you're not going to get anything back if you bring the bag back.
Correct, and you don't have to pay anything. Bring your own reusable bags, which is in many states, many countries, and that's the way to go. People should never have to pay 5 cents for a plastic bag. Just bring your own.
Yeah, that's right. And I will say, actually, in Europe, we've had that for over a decade. Yes. And in many places, most people bring their own stuff, or they carry it out like this. So why has it taken so much longer in the United States to gain track? Why do we have a culture that doesn't care about plastic bags? Or do we care? Or are we beginning to care?
We're beginning to care. But it's more of the convenience. We're a very mobile, car-centric, we get out and we travel, and you bring your water bottle with you. You're not, other people carry it home. We throw it out.
So why do we need, though, for 5 items at a grocery store, 3 bags?
You don't need 1 plastic bag. Just carry your own. And it's just a matter, just like in Europe and other states, people carry their own.
Yeah.
Richard, are you trying?
Hi.
Richard is waiting for us to actually talk about from the consumer side, and I'm getting to this point because I think this is what's at the heart of all of this, are 2 things. I want to talk a little bit about that. So we need to talk about what does it take to change the industry, and what does it take to change the consumer behavior? So we've heard a lot of different solutions that we can do, and I think all three of them are actually viable solutions, and they're not mutually exclusive. Best would be if we did all of them to make sure there is no waste and no plastic to begin with. So but let's talk a little bit about where the resistance comes from and what the road ahead can look like it. And it's a little hard to say, Richard. What do you think comes first? It's like the chicken and the egg. Do we need to change the consumer behavior first and then industry will follow, or do you think it's the other way around? Where do we start?
Well, first of all, I think we should really understand that for many products, plastic is the ideal solution for delivery between the manufacturer and the home. What we also need to expect and accept is that plastic is not to be used just once. It should be used many times, over and over again. It's not a choice between plastic and stainless steel or aluminium or anything else. Plastic is the ideal solution. The only problem with plastic is we use it really badly. We use it and dispose of it in the trash and expect somebody else, some other organization, to recycle it. This is nonsense. Recycling has not worked for over 30 years.
Yeah, but we need to look at why it hasn't worked. I think it hasn't worked because it was kind of half-hearted, and because a lot of consumers, it kind of didn't trickle through, though, right?
No, I think recycling has generated an attitude with consumers that it's always somebody else's problem.
Helene, would you agree with that?
Well, I think that it's a twofold problem, both at the consumer level and also at the corporate level. I think putting all of the onus on the consumer to recycle and all of the onus on the individual, and it's their responsibility. Yes, we have a responsibility to recycle. Yes, we have a responsibility to use less plastic and all. But it's also a corporate issue.
Yep.
And they have to be made responsible for it.
Yeah. Yeah, it needs to be part of the whole product life cycle to begin with, and not just think we just use it as a product to come out on the market, and then the product is on and then we just toss it away and nobody cares about where it's going to go. So I think we're all in agreement. What I'm hearing is everyone's in agreement on that one. So okay, so let's tackle that. When we talk about industry, Richard, I'm going to bring you back here for a second. What is the main resistance or issue with the industry? What does it take to change? Why is it so hard to change? You've been working on your machine for quite a while. So what did you encounter? What's the biggest issue?
Yeah, we have been promoting refilling for a very long time, but the single biggest obstacle is the corporate inertia, because many major brand owners are invested heavily in producing plastic packaging, and the processes to fill single-use packaging, and it's a stream of excuse me, it's a stream of manufacture, fill, ship and forget. There is no connection between delivery and recycling. It depends on consumers putting plastic packaging in the trash and expecting other organizations to collect, sort and recycle their packaging. We need to move to a system where the consumer is enabled to bring their packaging back, refill it, reuse it as many times as before it's recycled.
Okay,
It's not a material issue.
Yeah.
It's not about plastic. It's not about plastic. It's about consumer enablement to do the right thing.
Okay, let me show, we have a video in what your refill system, kind of how that would work, so that people have an idea what that actually looks like. So we can hopefully play this now. So Richard, you say in your video that in 10 refills it would save 97% of the plastics?
Well, 96, but yes.
Well, I read it over there on the screen. So 96% of plastics, is that, how did you get to that number?
That number was developed through a life cycle analysis by RAP in the UK, the Waste Resources Action Programme, who funded a 14-month trial of our systems in 5 stores. And those 5 stores were actually US controlled Walmart stores.
But in the UK, right?
In the UK.
Yeah. So what do you think? You've just seen that.
Well, I like, so if you could just, the plastic container, do they bring that back each time? That little bag?
Absolutely. They bring the same container. Once they've used it, they bring it back, just like their shopping bag that they take the shopping away from the store to home in. They bring the flattened, flexible pack back to store, put it in the machine refills it automatically.
Well, that's terrific. But I mean, if I forget to bring that to the store, is there still one I can purchase there? If I
Absolutely. And you may have forgotten to bring the pack back, and you take another pack from the side of the machine, and you fill it again. That just means you have 2 packs that are refillable.
Right.
And Richard, when we spoke, you mentioned there's some kind of a control system in there that you would kind of address a little bit the issue that I've addressed and said, how do I know when you refill that the container is clean and that it's actually for that very same thing and not used for something else?
Yeah, absolutely. So each retail pack has an RFID tag on it, which feeds back to the customer and records on our system the number of times the pack has been filled or refilled. It will prevent cross-contamination between 2 different products, and it will feed back to the consumer each and every time how many times that pack has been filled, how much plastic they've saved from going to landfill, and how much money they've saved by using that pack multiple times.
So to me, this actually, I think, is a really big part, because that would also turn me as a consumer as an active contributor, where I would know if I return something, what's my impact? So how do I actually participate in the environment? How do I actually positively impact? So how does my action of returning something and not use a new plastic, how does that actually contribute to making the world really a cleaner place? And that, to me, I think would be a really, really strong way of doing that, which, also, I think this is also something that once to use your bottles once they get returned, I think there also should be something, Rick, that could say the consumer, actually, what's their impact by doing so, other than just getting their little 5 cents back.
He is much smarter, and, he has figured that out.
Well, he's been working long enough on that.
It's hard to be an overnight success.
It is.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is so we know there's an approach for refill. We know there's an approach to actually make this more a go-to version, whether just go to the shelf and kind of get it off. But that, I think, would entail a little bit on the industry side, though, Richard, also restructuring how the businesses make money with shelving space and all these other things. Have you ever run across that or heard in terms of how that would impact their decision to put a refill system in place versus, the beautiful new packaging, branding and stuff? That's usually what sells a product.
Yeah, and the barrier to our entry into a mass adoption of our technology is really the sunk investment by each brand owner in the ownership molding and mold tools to produce packaging, and the ownership and sunk investment in high-speed filling lines to fill single-use packaging in each and every production facility. So that's our single biggest obstacle to adoption, but it's really simple. The future is not in single-use plastic. The future is in usable and refillable packaging.
Do we ever come up with a number in terms of how much? Let's say we use refillable plastics, and I know Richard says like you can actually buy refillables, you can get after 10 refills the number down to 96%, that's what it said. So that's a pretty big number. I mean, when you think about this, so what do you think in terms of when we actually go back and let's say we get to a point where we would get at least 40-50% of all the merchandise that's out there on refill? Are there any calculations in what that actually would do, how much we could reduce plastics?
Yikes. I don't know.
There's your homework, I think, for next time.
But I think here in Virginia, if we set out a tax and said you're going to if you want a single-use shampoo bottle that's plastic, you're going to pay an extra 10% tax on it.
Yeah, but if you do the taxes, then all you do is drive companies away because they're going to leave. Tax isn't the right approach, I think.
But so there's a fee if you're going to do a single use. There's no fee if you do the refillable.
But he actually says, so in Richard's system is that the refillable would be cheaper. And actually we did that too. So when I had the refill system, we would give refills 15 to 20% discount for the refill every time when they go back, because you wouldn't have to have the whole packaging. And packaging is actually one of the biggest cost factors in a product. It's not the ingredient or the content, which I know is probably very shocking to a lot of people who haven't worked in that industry, but the fact of the matter is that the packaging is one of the biggest costs.
Right. Okay.
For sure.
Yep. So we want to drive costs back, then you would think that refillables is a logical solution, actually, except that it doesn't look so nice on the shelf, and then you have to find other ways in terms of how do you get the consumer engaged to actually get that, which brings me now a little bit to the consumer. So we talked about industry a little bit, what they would need to do, changing the process, and then also having the guts and the foresight to say we actually put our money where our mouth is, and we kind of at some point we're going to have to make the switch and get away from the single use and actually go to refillables, even if that means an initial larger investment and possibly having some negative backlag on your consumers at first when they go in. So that's probably a factor. But then of course there are other things that would go with that, like a lot of people like sustainability. They like to actually see action to do this. So now let's talk a little bit about consumers. What do you think, I'm going to start with Helene on this one. What do you think, Helene, is one of the biggest issues for consumers to get more awareness and also more willing to really think about plastic in terms of how do I avoid that?
Well, I think that a lot of it is personal habit. We're used to single use. We're used to a throwaway society. We've been told basically since the 1970s when plastic became, part of our lives, that this is the way to go. It's convenient, it's healthy, it's sterile because you only use it once and throw it out. So I think a lot of education has to go into that. I think that there has to be incentives. Whether it's, you take your coffee cup to Starbucks and they give you 10 cents off on the coffee, or, you refill your laundry detergent as Richard is trying to propose, and you get money back for that. I think that's a way of doing it. But I think it's habit. People are going to have to change, and people don't like change. And we like our convenience. And I think at this point in our environment and what is happening in the world, that we're just going to have to kind of suck it up a little bit and be a little less convenient, a little less throwaway society.
Oh, I would totally agree. Rick, that brings me to you. So with the bottles, for example, let's talk a little bit about your bottle bill. What's in the bill? What are you trying to achieve?
We don't have a bill right now, but it's what we're trying to achieve is just to have the deposit system here in Virginia. We want everybody to pay 10 cents for their beverages. And then that will and reward them for, bringing it back. And that increases the amount of raw material available for putting recycled plastic back into new bottles. It reduces litter, and it creates, thousands of jobs, because everybody has to get involved in taking that back and counting them. So there's a lot that a bottle bill does, but here in Virginia, we need to get the public involved to support it, because it's been introduced for the past 30 or 40 years, and it never
So why did it never pass?
never gets out of committee. Nobody ever takes a vote on it.
Why?
There's a lot of people that fight it. Like Helen said, that the habit is you just buy it and you just throw it away. You don't want to be involved with the taking it back to the grocery store.
Nicolette, I have a question.
Hang on a second, let him finish, please.
But the things have changed. There are now, 40 or almost 50 different countries that have this. We have an awful lot of experience.
There's evidence for it.
There's evidence, and there are much better systems than 30 years ago, when people said, "Oh no, we can't do this. It's too hard."
Right.
Now the manufacturers are coming out and saying that this is good. This is good raw material that in Virginia we throw away and we burn, and we pay to throw it away, forcing the manufacturers and the bottlers to buy more new material. So things are, the manufacturing and the distributors are coming around to saying, oh, this is a good thing. What the Virginia bottle bill does, and I'll just put a little plug in here for myself, is that the website gives a place for the general public to go to, sign the petition, and we automatically send an email to every state legislator, or your specific state legislators, that says you support a bottle bill. It doesn't get into the specifics, whether it's 5 cents, 10 cents, 15 cents, but you just support the concept.
How many signatures do you need?
We need about 100 emails to every state legislator just to make it enough of a issue that it can get to be debated.
Okay, so we're in the stage of where it needs to get debated.
We are
You need
very
the
low.
signature to
We
get it
need to be
debated.
up here, and then we can get a debate on it.
Right.
And so it's a 3 or 4 year process, I think, to get enough public interest and support for this to prove to our state legislator that, yes, people want this.
But we can't wait 3 or 4 years anymore. Neither actually can you at home, because really, when you look around at the environment, it's pressing. We actually need it now. That's the reality of things.
Exactly.
Yeah, so there's no more time for it. Richard, what was your question?
Well, my question is, in a gas station where a lot of beverages are purchased, motor oil and products like diesel engine exhaust fluid and screen wash, why don't we just offer to those consumers a refillable pack? Already, even with the Coca-Cola soda fountain, and coffee, if you buy a coffee or a soda, you could go back and refill that same cup.
Well, it sounds.
And you use the cup at least once, twice, maybe 3 times.
So
I
think one of the big issues is, as Helene said, this is definitely habit, and I think we all forget. So it happens to you probably when you go 20 or 30 times to the store and you realize, wait a minute, I didn't bring my own cup. I could have saved this amount, let's say 10 or 15%, and you probably would have thought twice about this. So maybe the 31st time it kind of registers. So that maybe that could be, and I think that's also something we need to debate. But the thing is that somebody needs to take the first step.
For sure, but when anybody buys a soda in a truck stop or a service station, they put it in the cup holder in their car, they drink it along the journey, and the next time they fill up with gas, they can fill up the same cup that's in the cup holder. It's not a big issue.
No, but I think that's the hygiene, that's the sterility, I think, that we're all being used to, that people just toss it out, and that needs to change a little bit. But I do want to come back actually to your system here, Rick, for a second, for the signatures, because I know, there's a lot of pluses for it, and there are societies where this has really been very successfully deployed, Germany being one of them. We've had those machines for really years, where you go and you have machines, and which has the advantage that a lot of kids, for example, collect extra pocket money. You have people, homeless people, for example, collect extra pocket money that way, because they go, they pick up the bottles that are in there, they even go through trash cans and pick up stuff and then return the bottles, and then they actually get some stuff. So children, sometimes you see them with these big baskets and loads full, and they go there and they have kind of fun to put them all in, and you put about you can do the aluminum cans, you can do the plastic, you can do all sorts of stuff, the glass bottles, and you get your money back. So that kind of is an actually really proven way of doing that, I think.
Yes, people that do it like the system. It's just that hurdle of...
Yeah. Now, when we have a refill system, I want to ask you something about that. And actually, that's probably for both of you, if you have any ideas, or Helen may have some on this one too. So, Richard, what about the energy cost for filling the refill machines? Are there any data on what kind of energy? Are we saving energy? Do we need more? Or is the energy the same as if you were filling single-use plastics?
Yeah, the overall costs of a refill system for currently available products, as assessed by Unilever, is 50% of delivering pre-packed products.
So it's 50%
it's a huge
less.
Difference. Yeah,
wow.
50% less.
You also have the transportation issues.
Yep.
You're not transporting new bottles, which is fossil fuels for the transportation, the trucks, all of that. If you just look at that energy source, that is saving.
Yeah, absolutely. And as far as the hygiene issues are concerned, in Europe already we have Costa Coffee and many other coffee suppliers. The sort of coffee suppliers you'd be familiar with in the US, they already will fill and refill a consumer's cup at the point of production. They will fill that with coffee to reduce their environmental footprint simply by putting it into the consumer's cup.
So lower cost for the manufacturer, lower cost for the consumer. You have a positive impact on the environment. You actually can track your impact on the environment. That seems like a really powerful way of going forward, but that still then brings up the question, how do we make it happen? So what needs to happen to sensitize people to take the steps we need to take?
Yeah.
So
any takers? Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about in the United States right now, and for the second year, there has been a Break Free from Plastic Pollution bill that has been, Senator Markley has it, and Congressman Lowenthal on the two sides of the Congress. And it hasn't been able to pass, and it's wonderful. It talks about everything from what is happening with recyclables, with plastic, things like having a unified United States bottle bill, the recycling efforts, having the manufacturers take back the plastic, having it refilled, where is it going to, it's just the manufacturing of it. It's a wonderful bill. Well, we haven't got anybody in Virginia. Our state senators have not signed on to it. Congressman Connolly is the only congressman I know in the area that has signed on to it. So it's a political issue. It really is. And the other thing that I wanted to say was we're talking, Nicolette, about how come we don't have anything like a bottle bill at the state legislature. Why not? Well, yeah, I think we have to, look at the elephant in the room and say it is because there are a lot of lobbyists out there from the American Chemistry Council, from Dominion Power, that they are very, very powerful at the state level here. They're also very powerful at the federal level, lobbying. And they're against a bottle bill. They're against their refillables. So I think we need to look at that. In the state of Virginia, we can't have, even if Fairfax County would love to have a bottle bill, we can't do that because the state has to be the one to put it into the legislation that the counties have the right to do that. And that's one of the huge issues. It really is a huge issue. It took years and years for a plastic bag fee to go through. Unfortunately, we are not working quickly enough with what's happening with single-use plastics.
So I actually like to propose a different approach on this one, and I think it actually applies to the audience and to everybody else, because I think with the environment, how things have been going, it's time to take politics out of the equation and start to self-organize and start to put together what people need to do and do self-responsibility and really sort of figure out, how do we do this? So you have a lot of organizations that are on site that, for example, like the Faith Alliance, that are really very active in doing stuff. We can go out and educate consumers. We can even hopefully push people to ask for refill solutions and other stuff. We need some brave people who would come up with machines and put them up so you can actually put the bottles back in. And we would need some industry champions that would be brave enough to move past the PR stunt for the corporate responsibility and actually walk the walk instead of just talk the talk, and then take a stand and say, okay, we're going to do it. So really, if people talk about this, I think why would we not just take politics out of the equation? You bypass all the other stuff and we make it happen. And I think we see this in a lot of other things right now, where people really kind of say, well, we need to collaborate to make things happen. And then all the rest usually follows through.
Yeah.
They come.
Absolutely right, Nicolette. We need to park the status quo and move to a new tomorrow.
Exactly, because if we keep blaming and saying, well, this is an issue and we have to wait for politics, well, we could be sitting here in 10 years, but actually when you look at the climate and the environment, we're not going to be sitting here in 10 years.
Yep.
I agree. Yes, we need to do something now. Actually, we needed to do something before now. But
exactly. Now we have to do actually more than what was necessary. The time for talk has passed.
Yeah. Collecting bottles that people have used today and doing something more intelligent with them is yesterday's technology. We need to stop people using the very valuable resources like plastic only once and forgetting about them. We need to make it an absolute norm to use and reuse materials over and over again.
Yeah, that to me I think really goes hand in hand with also education, consumer education, people education. It drives me absolutely nuts when I go to a grocery store and you have people at the cashiers and they're doing a great job and everything. I'm not saying that, but no one asks, can we save the plastic bag and actually, use something else, or do you have your own bag? Instead, they keep packaging the meat, the frozen meat, in a different plastic bag. They're gonna put the dog food in a different plastic bag. And none of this makes sense. And when you say, oh, you can actually, why are you using different bags for this? It doesn't even register. So I think the onus is a lot on people. And I think we're also probably expecting too much from political representatives, because we kind of give the responsibility away and wait for other people to do it, versus when the real responsibility sits within us, each and every one.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no shortcut. There's no sugarcoating either. I mean, really.
Right.
Nicolette, the big issue in the US, everybody fills their cars with gas. Nobody gets a new gas tank every time they fill the gas tank.
Well, maybe we need to do this more as an allegory, but I don't think it's just in the US. I do think this is a common problem, and it certainly is, a lot of countries, and with the industrial society, that's a huge thing, because the structure is still being built off the last century in many ways. So the economic system, the consumerism, the processes, and all these things, that's where we need to make the switch, because we live already in a new paradigm, but we still experience the world and try to solve it in the old paradigm when we're already in the new. So it's not even time to build the bridge, we need to jump.
Yep.
No, and
sure.
I think you're right that, it's the individual responsibility, and, organizations like FACTS and Helene's,
Exactly.
350 Fairfax, those people that are going to make the change and start doing it. But when you do that and you start driving change, you have to let the politicians know. Politicians don't lead.
Absolutely. I'm not
They
saying
will
to leave
follow.
them out, but
Yeah.
the thing is, as you say, they follow. But the thing is, we need to stop looking at them for them to start the initiative. It has to come from us,
Right.
period.
Yeah.
And from
Yeah.
the
Yes, it
industry.
needs to come from us, but we also need the laws to change as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Helene. The law needs to change, but
But first we need to
The only
disrupt.
people-
Once you disrupt, the
the
law
only people
changes
who-
automatically.
Yep.
yeah, the only people who can really make this happen quickly are the brand owners.
Yes.
Yes.
They need to realize
Yes,
that we as consumers no
right.
longer accept
that's right.
a single position, which is buy, use, forget, and trash their product.
I agree, but how do you get a manufacturer to do that? That is the issue.
Because every single one of those brand owners have signed up to every plastic pact on the planet. They've all said, we are 100% green in terms of our approach to business, but they deliver zero.
That's right.
That's what
So
I meant with going past the walking, the talking the talk, and actually
Absolutely.
walking the walk.
Yeah,
No more PR
absolutely.
stunts.
So
It's real action.
we need to hold them to account and say, no, the way you did business yesterday is no way to do business tomorrow.
Yep.
And we have to stop that right now and work towards a sustainable future.
But the
I couldn't
same.
agree more.
Yeah.
And I think, we need to look at, as I said previously, at the consumer, but we also need to look at the manufacturer. And
Yep.
in doing that, there is some, a lot of the single-use plastic manufacturers are also have interest in fossil fuels. So it's very hard to ask them to not do single-use plastic because they're the ones that are providing the frack gas.
Yeah, absolutely right. But I can assure you that every single one of those principal brand owners across the planet 100% realize that they can know, alongside their commitments to Davos and all sorts of other COP measures, they cannot justify using single-use packaging anymore.
Let's
And
hope so.
it's up to us as consumers and responsible adults on the planet to call them to account.
Yeah, I think it has a lot to do with purchase power, and that purchase power is actually in the consumer's pocket.
Yep.
I would agree with that. I think it really depends on how can we voice it. We only have about 3 minutes left, so I want to talk a little bit as we go into the holiday season with all the packaging and all the wrapping. How, first of all, let's talk about how can people get involved. I know, Richard, we're going to have another episode on your refill system, so we talk a little bit more from the industry, try to tackle that. How can people find out about the bill? How can we need 100 signatures?
Oh, 100,000. There
you go.
It's vabottlebill.org, and you sign the petition there, and we'll send out a dozen emails for you, so you don't have to look up who your legislator is and type out the emails. We
Right.
do that all for you.
So, you heard that it is really important that we do take action. Gotta start somewhere, and it should be a no-brainer. It doesn't matter where you stand politically or so on. It's a no-brainer that the world has too much plastic as it is, so we all can actually take action. And it would be really, it would be terrible if we just oversleep this. There's no time for that. So that's one thing. And then, is there any other way, Helene, how can people get involved in your organization, also in FACS as well?
Yeah.
So what we do is every year we have a plastic-free challenge, which is the month of October. And then on our website, you'll see that we write blogs on how to cut back and eliminate single-use plastics from your life, whether it's reusing, or substitutes or swap outs or whatever. So we do that as an education. We have monthly meetings online the first Thursday of every month, and always talk about environmental issues, whether it's plastic, zero waste, planting trees, climate change and all. So people can get involved there.
So do we have any very last minute thought in terms of plastic wrap for the holidays? Do you want to get any word out on this one?
We're trying to cut back on the Amazon shopping, the shipping and then the plastic envelopes.
Yeah, that's a big one, because particularly like small bottles get like big boxes and all the plastic filled in between for the bottle to not fall. So good one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Helene, do you have anything to add on this one?
Well, in terms of holidays, one of the things you can do instead of giving things is give experiences. Cook dinner for someone, take someone out for dinner, take them on a hike, give them tickets to a show or whatever, rather than a thing which is wrapped in plastic.
Oh, I like that. And Richard, your last word for tonight?
Yeah, I have two things. One is Amazon is the spawn of the devil, and make sure that any packaging at all is channeled towards chemical recycling from this plastic to the next plastic, not incineration.
That's great. Thank you so much, all three of you. Thank you so much for watching. It was a great topic, and as you know, actually we have a lot to add and a lot to learn together on this one. So please go and read up on that, educate yourself, take some action. No one can sit it out anymore, no matter where you actually sit. So if you want more information, you can go to our Facebook page. Other than that, have a wonderful evening. We'll see you next week. Have a good night.